Hi guys, I'm October, but you can call me Toby. Thanks for coming to spend some time with me today. I'm going to continue on today creating this loose granny square shirt for my friend. In the last video I talked about planning, creating the granny squares, choosing colours, materials, abbreviations. So if you've missed any of that, please go back and have a look. But from here, let's keep going forward. Okay, now that I have this all crocheted together, I've pinned up the sides and tried it on and determined that I want to add a side panel to either side, so 2 side panels. I wanted it to be quite oversized for my friend and it's fitting fairly comfortably on me, so adding the side panels will just give it the oversized look I'm going for. The side panel will be the same width as my squares, so 12 centimeters wide. It will be 4 squares high and leave the top 2 squares on the garment open for the armhole. I'm also thinking about how I want to make the center section for the garment, the part where the buttons will go. Minimum it would need to be 6 centimeters, but really it should be wider so that there is overlap for the buttons to actually do up without skewing the garment. The center section will then taper off very quickly into the collar section before increasing again on the other side. Yeah, so I'm going to get started on the side panels now. Okay, now that I have finished the first side panel, I liked this pattern using single crochet, double crochet and triple crochets, and I did that on repeat to get the full length I needed. Once it was long enough, I did a row of single crochet in the same colour around each of the outside edges, and then I tied on my border yarn in that lovely blue and did a row of single crochet for my border. I attached it using the same method I used to join all of my squares together with single crochets. Now let's do the next side panel and I'll show you what I did. Down here on the bottom half of the second page, you can see my diagrams for the side panels where I was working out the width and how high I would want to make those side panels. And then down below that you can see that I was working out how many to chain and then single crochet, and then I moved on to completing that pattern before I actually wrote it up to see that I liked it before I bothered writing it all up. For the side panel, we are going to start off with a slip stitch and then we'll be chaining 21. We'll then start in the second stitch from the hook and we will be single crocheting 20 before we chain 2 and turn our work. Now that you've chained 2 and turned your work, we'll be doing a row of double crochet. So we do that into the top of each of those single crochets of the last row, giving us 20 double crochets before we chain 3 and turn our work again. Our third row is going to be double crochets with a chain 1 space between them. So after you've chained 3, which counts as our first double crochet and chain 1, we will be doing a double crochet into the second last double crochet of the last row. We will then chain 1, skip a stitch and do another double crochet. We'll continue doing this all the way down until we have 10 double crochets and 10 chain 1 spaces. Then we will chain 2 and we'll turn our work. Our next row will be another row of 20 double crochets. So after you've chained 2 and turned your work, you can do your first double crochet into the chain 1 space of the last row. You can go into the space itself, or you can pick up the stitch from the chain 1 and double crochet into that, completely up to you. But we'll be doing 20 double crochets for this row before we do a chain 1 and turn our work. Our next row will be single crochets. So once you've chained one and turned your work, we'll be doing 20 single crochets before we chain 4 and turn our work. Our next row will be triple crochets. So it's going to be triple crochet and a chain 1 space between each. So once you do your chain 4, which counts as our first triple crochet and chain 1, you will do your next triple crochet into the second last single crochet of the last row. You'll chain 1, skip a stitch, and do the next triple crochet into that following stitch. Do this all the way down the row until you have 10 triple crochets and 10 chain 1 spaces before chaining 1 and turning your work. This is the completed pattern for the side panel. So at this point, the rows will repeat. We'll chain 1, turn our work, do a single crochet row, and so on. You continue with the repeating pattern until you have your side panel long enough for what you need. Mine was 50 centimeters tall, so I needed about 7.5 repeats of the pattern to reach that length. I'll put the full pattern up on screen for you to use to recreate this if you'd like to. If your panel's going to be wider or longer, just adjust as needed. Once your side panel is as long as it needs to be, you can fasten off your yarn and cut it, and then tie on again using that same coloured yarn, and we'll be completing a row of single crochet around all 4 sides of our side panel. Once that row of single crochet is done, fasten off your yarn, cut it, and we will tie on again with our border colour yarn, and we'll complete a second row of single crochets around all 4 sides of the side panel. I found that finishing this side panel off with a row of the border colour yarn in single crochets around the outside made it look much more finished and cohesive with the rest of the garment, especially given that my granny squares are all finished off with a border of single crochets in this lovely blue colour that I'm using for my border colour yarn. And it also made it much easier to attach the side panel to the garment, because instead of working into the ends of each row, which varies from single to double to triple crochet rows, I am working into single crochets, so it's much simpler to attach as well. To do the first row of single crochets on our side panel, up the side you'll be single crocheting into the ends of each row, and our rows follow a pattern of single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, 2 rows of double crochet, a single crochet and a triple crochet row. So in order to make remembering how many crochets to do into each of those different stitches, I'll put a graphic up on the screen in a moment which will tell you how many single crochets to do into each type of row. So for our single crochet row, you would do a single crochet. You'd do 2 single crochets into any double crochet row, and you would do 3 single crochets into any triple crochet row. My side panel's complete and I've joined it using markers onto the garment on one side, as you can see. I'll be working from the top down on this one, so I've used 4 markers to join it at the halfway point, at the bottom corners, and at the 1/4 and 3/4 points. I'll be using the same method of single crochet to join the side panel onto the garment as I did for joining all of my granny squares together. So some of my granny squares along this edge will have more or less single crochets than the corresponding part of the side piece. So in some spots it'll be 1 for 1 single crochet. In some of them, most likely the sun and moon squares, I'll probably have to do 2 for 1 single crochets when joining it. And that's just to make sure that my side panel matches up to the garment in all the spots that I've marked. So at the top corners, at the center, and at the 1/4 and 3/4 point, and at the bottom. You don't want the garment and the side panels to be hugely skewed, or one square to be particularly stretched out where it's joined to the side panel. Here you can see that I am comparing my stitches of my granny square to my side panel, just checking if I'll need to do 2 for 1 stitches either way. It's looking like my stitches for this granny square and the side panel actually line up really nicely, so it'll just be 1 for 1 stitching along here. Over the joint, I decided to use a single stitch on the side panel for both stitches on the corners of my granny squares. So you can see here I'm going into a stitch on my side panel, going through the bottom stitch on the granny square I'm currently working into, and I finish off that single crochet, and I go back into that same stitch on the side panel and into the first corner stitch on the next granny square, finish off that single crochet, and then I move on as normal. Once you reach the end of the seam for this side of the side panel, we're going to go through the corner of the side panel, the bottom corner of the garment, and we're going to do a single crochet and tie off and cut our yarn here. So this side is now done, and the seam is facing in towards the side panel, just like the other seams on the front of the garment. Now I'll line up the other side with the back of the garment. So I already have my center point marked on the side panel, and I can attach that to the center point of the squares. Now I'm going to attach this top corner. Mind you, I should have done the center point between these two markers before I did the top corner. Would have been a bit easier, but I'll attach the top corner onto the top corner of the fourth square on the back panel. Just going to find the 1/4 point of the side panel here and put a marker through that and through the top of the first square on the back panel. Now I'm attempting to find the 3/4 point on my side panel. As I said, I should have done this before I attached the top corner. Would have been much simpler. And I'll place in a marker and attach that to the third square of the back panel. Now that I'm all marked up, I can start seaming up the side. I will work up from the bottom of the side panel and the garment so that my seam points in towards the side panel, just like the seams on this half of the back of the garment. There you can see I've finished that and the seams are pointing inwards, and now both side panels are complete. I'm really happy with how the side panels worked up, and if my friend needs the garment made smaller later, I can more easily remove these and just seam up the sides than I could if I had have done additional squares. It was also a lot quicker to make a single side panel for each side rather than making 4 squares a side and having to join them to each other before seaming them on. But I'm really happy with how this is looking. And although this video has been completely about the side panels, I think I will leave it there and decide how I'm moving forward with the center section and sleeves in the next video. So thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you if you stayed for the whole video. I hope you'll join me for the next one. Have a great day. Bye.